Happy New Year to all of you. I'm just trying to make sure everything is coordinated on my screens. So I'm just want to make sure we don't get any feedback once the video starts. But in the meantime, I would love to know who is here. Who is ready?
Hi, dropshippers.
There we go.
It's time to focus.
Sorry about that. Just trying to mute this. There we go. Just keen to hear where you're dialing in from and whether, I don't know if you celebrated Christmas and New Year's, but maybe just share what you're up to. Any big Tableau data viz goals for this year? Let me know. Leave a comment. I'd love to read from you. Always nice to have a bit of back and forth. Andy's dialing in from downstairs. Hi, Andy. I love that. That's very good. We're hopefully going to have dinner after this. Okay, let's get into it. So let me share my screen, make me a bit smaller, the screen a bit bigger. Here we go. So first up, what's the topic this week? Very good question. 2023. Can you believe that? Look, by the end of this year, there will be 8 years of Maker One Day. That is pretty cool. So the NOAA Annual Greenhouse Gas Index. Let's have a quick look at the original. So scrolling down, I guess it's not the world map. There's some charts. And the stat area chart, line chart, and the long table. The data can be found on the Maker One Day website. If this is your first time participating, you are diving into a year of wonderful data sets, a great community, lots of opportunity to learn, build your data skills, and build your portfolio, of course. So my personal recommendation is participate every week if you can, because it gives you a chance to have a really huge variety of visits over the course of the year. It's going to be all these different topics. If you scroll through some of the previous year's topics or the list of data sets, you will see that there's a lot. There's sports data, economics data, financial data, geographic data, like all sorts of stuff. So you get to practice with different types of data sets to build your skills and have different types of visualizations. So by the end of the year, you'll have 52 or 53 visits in your portfolio, and that's really fun. Now, if you can't participate every week, it's not a big deal either. You can jump in on the topics that interest you, or maybe you say you can do it once a month or once every 2 weeks. That is totally up to you, and we will work with whatever you can commit to. Also, maybe a quick reminder, if you're new, that you don't have to build super elaborate visits every week. If that's what you want to do and you have the time to commit to it, by all means do that. Knock yourself out, try all the different things. But if all you have is 30 minutes, then do whatever you can in 30 minutes, because it's better than feeling like it's not enough and actually not showing up at all. 30 minutes is great. You have prepared data. The data should be clean, should be ready to use. You have the article that it appears in, even if you just read a few paragraphs around it, just to understand what's the context of this visualization, and then build your own. And all you could do is start with just creating different charts based on the fields you have available, asking yourself things like, what is going on, where, so maybe some geographic information, when, build a timeline, build a line chart, and just using those very basic questions to explore the data, to understand what it's all about, and you can just publish those. Ideally, wrap a bit of a story around it, give it a good title, make sure you include your sources, and if that's all you can do, that's totally fine, because you will still see progression and improvement every week if you show up and do the work. And that's how we operate at Maker One Day. Now, these sessions we will run as regularly as possible every Wednesday. They're kept to half an hour. And what I will do is I will now move over to the Twitter feed. Ideally, if you want to be reviewed, I need to be able to find you on Twitter. So you post a tweet with your visualization. Include the link if there is some sort of interactive visualization. Otherwise, make sure there's always a picture included as well. And you don't have to include, what the week number is or the topic. I will be able to tell. But for example, this first one that shows up in my feed is an older data set. So I'm going to skip that because I'm only going to cover visualizations from this week. And what I'm going to do is, let's start with this one here from Yuta Sakai. I will give feedback on these visits. Given the short amount of time, we have 30 minutes, my feedback will be pretty straight to the point. Now, please make sure to always remember it's about the viz. It's not some sort of personal critique of your skills in any way. I will just focus on, does this communicate the data well? Do I understand what's going on? And I would say I'm a reasonably good benchmark because I'm data literate, but I don't look at these topics ahead of time. So if I don't understand what you're talking about, the chances are really good that most lay people out there on the internet where they see your viz wouldn't understand it either. So that's how I operate. I will give you feedback on things like colors, some of the text you've used, the titles, maybe some of the formatting or the approach to the visualization, but also the overall impression. And I will go through as many as possible, but sometimes I linger a little bit on one viz because maybe there's more to say. And sometimes, or quite often actually, I might not get to your specific visualization, but trying to take away learnings from what I talk about with the other vizzes. So whatever I say about this visualization will probably apply to similar visualizations like bar charts, possibly line charts, but also you will probably learn something from each one. Now, you can take notes, you can post in the chat something that you've learned, whatever helps you retain the knowledge and make sense of it more easily. And you don't have to make any changes to your viz, but of course, the intention is we give you feedback, you can update your viz, you can republish it and say, hey, I've changed it, and this is my final version of this week's visualization challenge. So that's how it goes. Glad to see there are already some comments in there and these monitoring rows. Let's get into it. Let's get into the meat of this review. Okay, let me just quickly tidy up because I can't handle having too many tabs open. Let's have a look. How do we reduce greenhouse gases? The annual greenhouse gas index is increased year by year. It's calculated the ratio of total direct probably radioactive. Oh, I don't know, radiative forces maybe due to these. Okay, I don't fully understand that sentence. There's a bit of technical terminology, maybe a bit of a typo in there. So it's a ratio of something compared to something else in 1990. This chart shows the value -1. Why -1? So good thing. I love that there's a description of what we're looking at and how it's calculated, but I don't fully understand the description. So what would help here is maybe, and this, maybe English is not UT's first language, and that's totally fine. But try to maybe review how you've described it. Is this, if it's, from that article, maybe you've missed a word or something. I don't fully understand it, but I like that there's a description in there because it's really helpful, because this is a, quite a specific topic. In 2021, there is a 48.8% increase in total direct radiative. This doesn't really sound right. I don't know what the terminology is, but total direct radiative forcing doesn't sound right. From human-derived emissions of these gases. Oh, radiative. Oh, it is the term. Okay, sorry about that. My bad. I haven't read the article, so I didn't know that's the terminology. Now, what I would suggest in that case, so don't change the words if they're not wrong. I think as a layperson who doesn't know really much about the ins and outs of greenhouse gases, like I can't tell you about the chemistry and the physics behind it. Can you put this into something that's easier to understand in everyday English? So it's fine to use the terminology, but then say, okay, what does that mean? So this increase, is that what we call an increase in greenhouse gas emissions? Is that how it's communicated by the media, or is that something else? So in 1990, the Kyoto Protocol was put in place. Okay, there was some sort of assessment of climate change. So I suppose what this paragraph or this text is trying to say, we're comparing everything to 1990. That's our baseline. So on the right is how it's increased since. On the left is how it was lower before. So I guess our goal is to actually go back to the blue kind of zone rather than the red. Now, this looks like a really, okay, so increases are always a bit different, but it looks like a pretty straight line. Like we've really messed things up as humans. And also, what does this mean? So 48.8% higher compared to 1990. Maybe there is some information on what did they expect. So there was probably in 1990 a projected, if we don't change anything, this is how we're going to progress to 2020. I imagine they probably said, oh, we'll be somewhere around there, but we're actually much worse. So is there some other context you can give us apart from its increase? Maybe you can't, just a suggestion. Also really good to include your data source and your name as the author. Why? Because not everyone will go to this page. People might just see your picture on social media, on Twitter or LinkedIn, wherever you post it. And if somebody copies it and shares it, you want to be able to get the credit for it by being included as the author. So in addition to including your name, make sure it's included in a part of the viz. So bottom right is always good, or bottom left, somewhere in the bottom. But it's good to have it on the same line as some of the data itself, because then no one will crop it out. If your name is much further down, they could just crop it out if it doesn't impact the viz. But here, if you were to cut out this section in the top and bottom right corner, you would lose part of the visualization. So well done. I also like the color choice. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so that's Andy's original. I don't know why that shows up and then they're not really in chronological order. Oh, sorry, I did top instead of latest. Let's do that instead. Okay, Yusuke, let's have a look. Greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise. Actually, it seems like this is a little bit small on your screen. Let me see if I can make this a bit bigger. Yeah, that should be better. Greenhouse gases trap heat and make the planet warmer. Human activities are responsible for almost all of the increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. I love that explanation because it's really nice and simple, and it's something I can quite easily relate to. It's like, okay, the gases trap the heat and it makes the planet warmer. Because one thing I always found really confusing personally about greenhouse gases is you think of a greenhouse where they grow vegetables, you're like, that's not a bad thing. Of course, it's kind of more just an analogy or like an image for how to mention it. But I like the description that the gases trap the heat. I think that's, they just create, I imagine there's a film in the air and, everything kind of gets stuck under it. They make the planet warmer. So now, what I would like in this viz, so I do like that it looks quite sciencey. It could be in a scientific journal or something. What I would like is a description of what these things are, because the top makes me think, oh, this is going to be really easy to understand. Then I have a chart for different gases and how much they've increased over the years, but no definition. So there's the total. Okay, fine, total is total. And what is CO2 equivalent, I think? I forget what some of these are. Chemistry is a long time ago. But could you define what this gas is called as a English name or common name, and maybe also what it does or where it's derived from? So I imagine there's methane in there somewhere. So methane comes from farting cows. How would we as everyday people come across this gas or have heard of it maybe in the context of climate change? Other than that, there isn't really a story here as such. It's more reporting the increases across some different gases, and there could be more of a story to say, okay, so overall it's gotten a lot worse. Some specific gases have gotten a lot worse, but then what's going on with CFCs? What's happening here? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And what does it mean? So it could be just a small annotation that says, okay, since 1997, there's been a decrease because of why the decrease happened, but also so HFCS, there seems to be an increase since 1979, but it really accelerated after the 2000s. So why? That's what I would love to know here, if that's a question you can answer with the data. Okay, then we have this one, this one. Takafumi. Oh, we have a lot of submissions from Japan, I believe, this week. So, but also totally fine if people haven't gotten around to it yet, because everyone's just emerging from the festive break, if they were celebrating Christmas or maybe other holidays, but also, of course, New Year's, and some people aren't back at work yet. So, global radiative forcing over time. I now know this is a term. Again, I would love to understand what it means. Now, I could look this up, but I don't want to take the time now. I would rather focus on the visitors, but I would say, just tell me what global radiative forcing is, because it's mentioned again in the second sentence. Hover over to display values. Where do I hover? Over the dots? Oh. Okay. So at 1981, why did something disappear? Oh, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what's happening here. So we have, because stuff seems to disappear. I don't understand the interaction. So I find it a bit confusing, because as I hover, the viz changes, but it looks like I'm creating holes in the viz because I have these gaps. And I feel a little bit like I've deleted something, but I haven't. Well, there's one. So I've got 1994. So I get the values for each of the 4 gases that are included here. What's CH4, what's N2O, what's CO2. So ideally define those. You can define them in the top right corner. So it tells me the comparison to 1990, which is our baseline. Why is the gap? Is the gap just to make room for the annotation or the labels? Or is there some other reason? Because obviously there isn't a gap in the timeline. So I find that a little bit confusing, because I don't expect that behavior. Yeah, just something to maybe think about. Otherwise, I really like the visual. Actually, it's a bit large. Let me just shrink it up a bit. I really like the visual and the design. I think the the colors are good. They're, at least from my eyes, they're distinct enough. You know, I've got dark blue, more like a teal / turquoise, gray and green. So for me, they're distinct enough to compare them quite easily, and none of them cross over. So that's quite easy. But again, what's the story? Is the story just everything has increased, or is it, hey, use this to interact and show how they've increased compared to 1990? I would like to know a bit more. Okay, Satoshi. Let's have a look. So, atmospheric greenhouse gases are surely increasing. Why surely? In this context, or in this title, the word surely seems a bit like you're trying to tell us it's certain, but it actually makes me feel less certain. That is not required. I would remove the word surely. They're increasing. I think that's indisputable. So we have a definition of AGGI. We don't have a definition of global radiative forcing. I see 1979. So this must be the total across the gases that are relevant for the, global warming, climate change. Most of that was made up by CO2 and CH4. Now we have the same gases, but just much more of them comparatively. Now, I think that is a great visual. It's a bit hard to compare because they're quite far apart, because you have the line chart in between. So maybe consider putting them one next to the other. Another way I've seen this work is that you could, I don't know how you do this visually in Tableau, but I'm going to suggest it. So I imagine they're sized in like the equivalent size. So that the length of and the width, it's the same scale. So what you could do is, it looks like you can about fit 2 of these boxes on the left, 1979, into 2021, which to me means we've doubled the emissions, right? There's twice as much. So could you, with a dotted line, show, maybe this bit in the middle, if I cut it off in the middle, if this is accurate, on the left side, this is how much it used to be across all gases in the past. And now we have more CO2 emissions than we previously had global emissions across all those different greenhouse gases. I think being able to compare how much of the right side does the left side fit into would be really helpful. I've seen that in a viz, I don't remember where it was. I can't think of it, but it was really well done, where it explained, kind of going from the small thing into this big thing. I need to think of the name of, he published it, and it's one of the, well-known people in the data viz world, but I can't think of it right now. So going from, we have this thing on the left and suddenly we have like twice as much, making that a bit more obvious would be great. I think the colors work on the dark backgrounds, but always bear in mind, when you have a black background, your colors look different and something might be harder to read. I personally find in this case, I would make the fonts a bit larger, because you have a lot of empty space and you could make the font larger to make it easier to read. Okay. Oh. All right. Shreya. Let's have a look what she has created. Radiative forcing. It corresponds to an additional warming of the planet. Okay. This is really neat. So having a stacked area, or having area chart. Yeah, stacked area chart, to show how much the different greenhouse gases contribute to this total radiative forcing. So we can see fairly easily that CO2 has grown the most. CH4 has grown, but not quite as much. It's been reasonably consistent, and then there's others that have grown, and N2O. Rate of change per year. I find, okay, I don't know if I love this in the context of this topic, because it makes it look like it was worse in the beginning, because you're looking at rate of change. So from a small beginnings of, the late 70s, early 80s, when a small change, well, when the change resulted in large percentage change or large rate of change, whereas now we're already so bad that what we're adding on doesn't seem like a big change, but we're already doing so poorly. It looks like there isn't so much bad stuff happening on the right, simply because of the shape of the chart. So I would reconsider that. You are already showing on the left the contribution, so that's already the direction I'm heading into. But I just think this could, if people don't understand what it shows and they don't think about what that means, it could be that they come to this conclusion of, oh, it used to be really bad and now it's not as bad. I also like the stuff at the bottom around, how long does CO2 remain in the atmosphere. So okay, so there's the years. I don't know what GWP means, so that would be good to explain. I also think you should define parts per million, because a lot of these abbreviations people won't necessarily be familiar with, or they might know them, but, oh, there's a little information button, GWP. So this is the challenge of having a background image. It's really hard to see those things. You could make the background just, I don't know, it's a bit hard. So I would make those buttons a bit more obvious, maybe even just giving them a white outline so people see, oh, there's a little button, because it's really helpful having those definitions. And then make sure, Shreya, to put your name on this viz so people know who made it. Okay, we have a little bit of time left. Let's have a look at Nicholas. viz. So very different style, and that's what I really enjoy seeing. Just everyone's different contributions and how they approach the topic, but also how they design their viz. So much more of a business style dashboard. So this should be relentless raise, but it should probably be rise, not raise. So relentless rise. Oh dear, sorry. It's random. I thought I was in do not disturb. A relentless rise of greenhouse gas emissions. So, yep, some definitions. Great. I'm not going to read through all of them. So open data glossary window. Oh God, leave me alone. Sorry, guys. Oh God. Sorry, I got a bit frazzled by that call. So let's just click on this and see. Oh, okay. Related references and sources used in this visualization. That's great. That's really helpful. Reference dates, date as of, cool. Oh, this is neat. I really like that. And I can close all of these and get back to my viz. That's cool. Well done, Nicholas. I think that's a really nice addition, and it means you have more space for your viz in the actual viz. So how the index has evolved, it's obviously grown over time. I would say be careful when you make the viz wide, because it makes the growth quite flat, just the nature of the layout. So if you want that to be a bit more obvious, you might just want to squish it up. It could also be that you make the chart narrower and maybe put some more text, some more information on the right side to fill that space. Or you could display, as you know, as somebody, you could encourage people to hover over it to see values. Maybe you display that on the right side. But yeah, the danger of a really wide chart is that the trends just get a bit. How is this? This should be, how is it? Split. Maybe is what contribution does each gas make to this rise? Might be a bit more of an elegant way to formulate it, or to phrase it. Evolution percentage of the main gas emissions since 1979. So what are, well, I can probably look it up. So halogenated compounds. I can't look it up. So what does that mean? Halogenated compounds. Methane I've heard from the farting cows. Carbon dioxide I've heard. Nitrous dioxide I've heard. But this first one I don't know. I've not heard this before. So might be worth explaining or giving an example. So this is how they've evolved, but I don't think it's the contribution they've each made to this overall, right? Because from what I've seen in the previous visits, it looks like carbon dioxide is like the biggest contributor. So would be, maybe you actually sort them by the contribution, so, or by the increase. So carbon dioxide first, nitrous oxide second, halogenated compounds, and methane. I would also put a bit of space between them, because at the moment they kind of blend into each other. And again, squish your viz up a bit. Actually, make it not quite as wide, so that these aren't so flat. A line chart or a bar chart that is, you know, rectangular like these are, should be a ratio of 3:2. So 3 units wide, 2 units tall. Okay, we have time for one more. Let's see if there's one more for me to do. Oh, Archie Boswell, his first Maker Monday of the year. Welcome. Let's have a look. There is a radio chart. How has the global radiative forcing changed from blah, 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 blah. This is measured by the effect that long-lived. Okay, I'm going to skip the description. How it's changed over time. Now, I do like the spiral, because I think it gives people, it draws their attention. It will definitely make somebody look at your viz, because they're like, what is this? Like, this looks interesting. The challenge you will have is it's extremely hard to compare one line to another when they're not right next to each other. So it might not really give you the full extent of how big a deal this is. Plus, in this case, if you think of the timeline going from left to right, so from 1979 to 2021, This time we have got anti-clockwise, which is probably not intuitive. So people would expect it, they would think this is the start and then maybe this is the end rather than the other way around. So have a think about reordering that. So you start with the smallest. And I wonder if instead of having individual bars going, out in a spiral, could you make it an area instead so you can see that increase more? That's something I would change there. And then the breakdown of the gases, I think nice and simple, could be either larger or more squished up because there's a lot of blank space. But what does it mean? So is this in 2021 or is it at a certain point in time? And okay, so if I click on a different year, I guess it will change. Yes. Okay, so we were starting with 1979, I think. So that's the breakdown. Maybe you could, next to them in brackets, have the percentage of how much that contribution was. And then that's 1.7 parts per million. And if I go to 2021, it's 3.2. So that's a lot worse. But apart from this visual, these bars, I don't really see the difference, because looking at the numbers, our brain takes in images much more quickly. So if we see it through, like, maybe it's 2 bars, like maybe you compare, that bar to the other one or something, or to the Kyoto Protocol year of 1990, that's just easier to comprehend. And then I will go to the detailed information on the right and say, oh, this is how much they contributed. If I just have to do that in my head, I'm not as likely to do it. So something to think about. But otherwise, welcome to Makeover Monday. I don't know if you've done Makeover Monday before. If you haven't, welcome. Otherwise, welcome back. And Andy has commented that you're in the data school, so I hope you have a great time at the data school. We're going to wrap it up here. I hope everyone has learned something. And I also hope to see you back next week, probably same time. Andy will schedule these, and as long as you're subscribed to his channel, you'll see them pop up. And with that, have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone, and I'm going to try